Imagine you're walking through a parking lot. On your left is a bright red sports car, the kind of car that makes people suddenly remember they have somewhere important to be, just so they can walk past it again. On your right is an old sedan, nothing special. No fancy badge, no roaring engine, no dramatic entrance music, just a car. Now here's a question. Which owner do you think is wealthier? Most people point at the sports car, and that's exactly why this conversation matters. Because the biggest financial misunderstanding in modern society is that we've confused spending money with having money. And those two things are not the same. In fact, they're often opposites. The strange truth is that many people spend their entire lives trying to look rich, while unknowingly making it harder to actually become rich. And the day you stop playing that game, everything begins to change. Not overnight, not magically, but permanently. Let's start with a confession. We're incredibly intelligent creatures. We built airplanes, we built computers, we built satellites that orbit the Earth. And then we use those same advanced brains to convince ourselves that buying a slightly newer version of the phone we already own will somehow transform our lives. A phone, a rectangle, with slightly rounder corners, and somehow we're excited. That's impressive. Marketing executives deserve awards because they've managed to convince millions of people that happiness is always one purchase away. Not this purchase, the next one, always the next one. And that idea quietly controls more financial decisions than most people realize. Let's imagine a guy named Jake. Jake is smart, hardworking, responsible. He's not reckless, he's not lazy, he's just normal. And that's important because most financial problems don't come from stupidity, they come from normal behavior. Jake gets his first serious promotion. For the first time in his life, he feels like he's getting ahead. Naturally, he wants his lifestyle to reflect his success. So he upgrades his car, then his apartment, then his furniture, then his wardrobe, then his electronics, then his vacations, then his subscriptions. At some point, Jake is paying monthly fees for services he forgot existed. Somewhere, a fitness app is collecting money from him while he eats pizza on the couch. And every decision feels reasonable. That's the dangerous part. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to sabotage my financial future today. Instead, they say, I've worked hard, I deserve this. And honestly, sometimes they do. The problem isn't enjoying money. The problem is believing every increase in income must immediately become an increase in lifestyle. Because that's how people accidentally become trapped. The moment Jake gets a raise, his expenses get one too. The moment he earns more, he spends more. The moment he moves forward, his financial freedom stays exactly where it was. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it never feels full. Now, let's meet Sarah. Sarah receives the exact same promotion, the exact same raise, the exact same opportunity. But Sarah does something incredibly boring, and boring is underrated. She doesn't immediately upgrade everything. She keeps driving the same car. She stays in the same apartment. She continues investing. Her life looks almost unchanged. In fact, some people assume she's struggling because apparently we've reached a point in society where being financially responsible looks suspicious. People see someone driving a practical car and think, poor thing. Meanwhile, the owner might have enough investments to retire early. The lesson here is simple. Looking wealthy and being wealthy are completely different activities. One requires spending. The other requires focused, boring, responsible investing. And patience is hard. Very hard. Because modern society is built around speed. Fast food, fast internet, fast delivery, fast entertainment. We want everything immediately, which creates a problem when wealth is one of the few things that still grows slowly. Nobody wants to hear that. People want shortcuts, secrets, life hacks, miracle investments, the financial equivalent of eating cake and losing weight. But real wealth is usually built through ordinary decisions, repeated consistently over long periods of time. Not exciting, not glamorous, just effective. And that's why so many people ignore it. Because the truth is too simple. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, wait. That's basically it. Yet millions of people struggle to do it. Why? Because there's another force working against them. Comparison. Comparison is one of the most expensive habits on earth. Imagine two neighbors, same street, same age, similar income. One buys a luxury SUV. Immediately, the comparison begins. The first neighbor appears successful. The second appears ordinary. But appearances tell only part of the story. What nobody sees are the bank accounts, the investments, the debt, the financial stress, the sleepless nights, the future opportunities. People judge wealth based on what they can see, but wealth is mostly invisible. Nobody posts a picture of their emergency fund. Nobody takes selfies with their index funds. Nobody uploads a glamorous video of themselves increasing retirement contributions. So instead, we compare visible lifestyles, and visible lifestyles are often terrible indicators of actual wealth. Social media makes this even worse, because social media isn't reality. It's a highlight reel. Imagine watching the trailer for a movie and assuming you've seen the entire film. That's basically how social media works. You see the vacation, not the credit card bill. You see the luxury apartment, not the anxiety, not the debt. You see the success, not the sacrifice. And when people compare their real lives to someone else's highlights, they almost always feel behind. This feeling is incredibly profitable because insecure people spend money. Confident people make decisions. There's a difference. Companies understand this. They know that if they can convince you that you're missing something, you'll buy something. And so the cycle continues. Work harder, spend more, compare more, stress more, repeat. For years, sometimes decades, until one day something interesting happens. A person begins asking different questions. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" they ask, "What can I keep?" Instead of asking, "How do I impress people?" they ask, "How do I increase my freedom?" Instead of asking, "How rich do I look?" they ask, "How financially secure am I?" And those questions change everything. Because eventually you realize something. The goal was never the car. The goal was never the house. Those things were supposed to represent something deeper. Freedom, security, control, peace of mind. The irony is that people often sacrifice those very things to acquire symbols of them. Think about that. Someone buys an expensive car to feel successful, then spends years making payments that create stress. They sacrifice peace of mind to purchase a symbol of peace of mind. That's backwards. Real wealth doesn't make the loudest entrance. It creates the quietest worries. Imagine having enough savings to handle an emergency without panic, enough investments to take time off when needed, enough flexibility to say no to things that don't align with your values. That's wealth, not because it looks impressive, because it changes how you live. One of the biggest misconceptions about money is that people think rich individuals are obsessed with money. Many aren't. They're obsessed with freedom, the same way a hammer isn't the goal when building a house. The house is the goal. Money is valuable because of what it allows you to do. And the most valuable thing it buys isn't luxury. It's time. Time with family, time for health, time for hobbies, time to think, time to rest, time to choose. The older people get, the more they understand this. Ask someone in their 20s what they'd like more of. Many will say money. Ask someone in their 70s. Many will say time. The problem is that we usually learn this lesson after we've spent decades trading time for things. And sometimes the things aren't even that impressive. Some people are sacrificing years of freedom for gadgets they'll replace in 2 years. That's not a financial strategy. That's a subscription service with extra steps. Now, don't misunderstand. This isn't a lecture against enjoying life. Life should be enjoyed. Money should improve your life. The goal isn't to become a financial robot who lives in an empty room eating plain rice while staring at investment charts. That sounds terrible. The goal is balance, intentionality, awareness, the ability to distinguish between purchases that genuinely improve your life and purchases that simply improve your image. Those are different things. And once you recognize the difference, your entire relationship with money begins to shift. You stop chasing appearances. You start building foundations. You stop asking how wealthy someone looks. You start asking how much control they have over their future. Because ultimately, that's what wealth provides. Options. Imagine waking up tomorrow and knowing that losing your job wouldn't immediately create panic. Imagine being able to help family members when they need it. Imagine making career decisions based on purpose instead of desperation. Imagine sleeping without financial anxiety, constantly sitting in the corner of the room like an unpaid intern. That's the power of real wealth. It's subtle, invisible, quiet, but life-changing. The funny thing is that most people won't notice when your financial life improves. There won't be dramatic music. There won't be applause. Nobody throws a parade because you increased your investment contributions. Trust me, I've checked. The city isn't organizing festivals for responsible budgeting. The improvements happen slowly. A little more saved, a little less debt, a little more confidence, a little more freedom, year after year, until eventually you realize something incredible. You no longer need to prove anything. You don't need validation from strangers. You don't need to compete. You don't need to impress people who aren't paying your bills. You become comfortable with who you are, and that confidence is far more valuable than any luxury purchase. Because confidence that comes from possessions disappears when the possessions disappear. Confidence that comes from capability stays. Markets change, economies change, jobs change, trends change. But a person who understands money can rebuild. That's real security. Not the appearance of success, the ability to create success repeatedly. And that's why the day you stop trying to look rich is often the day you start becoming rich. Because your priorities shift, your decisions shift, your habits shift, your future shifts. You stop chasing signals, you start building substance. You stop focusing on appearances, you start focusing on outcomes. And over time, those small changes compound into a completely different life. A life with more options, more flexibility, more peace, more freedom. Not because you won some secret financial lottery, but because you finally stopped playing a game that was designed to keep you running in circles. The game of appearances. The game of looking successful instead of becoming successful. And when you leave that game behind, something amazing happens. For the first time, your money starts working toward your future instead of your image. And that's when real wealth begins.